I am not disappearing for you this time, my mother said over the phone. If you come near Rowan House tonight, I will tell the sheriff exactly what your doctor said, that you are not fit to manage anything. She said it while standing in my grandmother's tea room under the brass chandelier I had polished with my own hands 3 days before I left for the clinic that was supposed to help me walk without vomiting every time the room tilted. I was parked in the old service van across the delivery lane, watching her through the night feed on my tablet. My half-sister Jade was in the orchid hall behind her, arranging white candles along the tea service tables like she was setting up a bridal shoot. My stepfather Vic had opened my grandmother's reserve champagne and was pouring it into crystal flutes for 2 local investors he had invited to what he was calling a private preview. My grandmother had been buried less than 48 hours, and my family was already drinking to the death of my place in Rowan House. Vic took the phone from my mother and leaned toward the camera in the tea room, knowing I could see him through the smart display. He smiled the way men smile when they think power has finally settled where it always should have. You had your little breakdown, Tessa, he said. We turned your dying plant museum into something useful. Useful. Rowan House was not a gift shop. It was not a random greenhouse with a cute old name. It was my grandmother's conservatory, a historic orchid house and tea room she built over 37 years, 1 salvaged beam, 1 restored pane, 1 hand raised, cutting at a time. School groups came there. Couples took their wedding portraits there. Garden societies booked the winter hall. Women in town who had lost husbands or children came on Saturday mornings to repot orchids and sit under warm glass where it smelled like rain and green leaves instead of grief. The mist lines, the grow lights, the climate zones, the cutting benches, the propagation room, the archives, the seed ledgers, the private client list, the conservatory kitchen, all of it belonged to that one place. It was not just real estate. It was my grandmother's business, and my life's work, after I became the only one in the family willing to keep it alive. And now, before the funeral lilies had even started to brown, they were opening her champagne under my roof and calling it useful. Behind Vic, a mover wheeled out the brass humidifier cabinet from the East Hall. Another man carried a crate stamped Propagation Record Zone 3. My throat went tight. Put that down, I said. My mother laughed softly like I had embarrassed myself. You do not get to give orders here anymore, Tessa, she said. You are lucky we have kept your room untouched. My room. She meant the narrow service bedroom over the boiler hall where I had slept on and off for almost 2 years because my grandmother got scared at night after the chemo started and liked hearing me move around in the kitchen before dawn. Jade stepped into frame in a cream knit dress that still had the tag thread hanging from one sleeve. Mom asked her if she got the agreement, she said. I need to know before I post the launch photos. The agreement. There it was on the marble tea counter, clipped under a silver pen. Emergency Property Management Consent. Temporary Operating Authority. Family Stabilization Plan. All in my name. All supposedly signed by me, while I was still in Red Ash Neurological Rehabilitation 2 counties away, learning how to stand up without the world spinning sideways. I looked at the signature block on the scan. It was not my signature. It was not even a good fake. You forged that, I said. Vic shrugged. No, he said. We saved the place while you were sedated and useless. That word should have made me yell. Instead, it made me very calm, because useless was what they had called every hour I ever spent doing the part of Rowan House nobody wanted to touch. I was the one who crawled under the south benches to fix the drip valves in January. I was the one who lifted peat sacks until my back screamed. I was the one who cleaned algae from the fountain pump, rewired the mist timers, balanced the bookings, packed donor orders, drove the van to estate clients, and slept on a cot beside my grandmother when the pain meds made her disoriented. My mother liked to tell people I chose plants because I was hiding from real life. What she meant was that I chose work she could not photograph and claim as her own. When my grandmother got too weak to carry watering trays, I built the Saturday orchid class around table height stations so she could still teach from a stool and feel useful. When the west roof cracked during spring hail, I spent 2 nights on the catwalk with a harness and sealant, because we had 3 wedding bookings that weekend, and no money for outside labor. The second night I slipped, not far enough to die. Just far enough to split the side of my head on an iron brace, tear my shoulder, and leave me with weeks of vertigo, and a brain that punished every sudden light and loud sound. I was in the hospital when my mother first texted, not to ask if I was alive, to ask for the master codes. My grandmother was still alive then, already fading, and I remember staring at that message through nausea, and thinking I had finally run out of excuses for them. My mother had never loved Rowan House. She loved being seen at Rowan House. She loved donor brunches, charity portraits, garden club applause, and the fact that people in town still lowered their voices when they said my grandmother's name. Vic loved the acreage and the tax value. He kept a notebook full of men who wanted boutique inns, event venues, wellness retreats, anything that could turn old beauty into fast cash. Jade loved the backgrounds. She used the orchid corridor for brand videos called the Potting Room Rustic on camera, and once tried to charge a skincare company for a sponsored picnic inside my grandmother's memorial rose house 2 days after she died. Not one of them ever stayed late to scrub fungus trays. Not one of them ever sat through a night when my grandmother forgot the date and cried because she thought my dead father was supposed to pick her up. But grief makes vultures bold. My grandmother died while I was still in rehab. By the time I got my balance back enough to walk the hallway without holding the rail, my mother had told half the county I had checked myself into a psychiatric facility after a breakdown. She said the concussion had made me paranoid and erratic. She said I threatened to sell the conservatory for medicine money. She said the family had stepped in to protect the property while I got help. I came home to find my own locks changed, my mail-forwarded vendor checks rerouted, and the website quietly edited to say management under review. My family thought I would come to the front gate crying. Instead, I parked the van across the lane, opened my admin panel, and started taking Rowan House back one system at a time. My grandmother never trusted anyone else with master access. Not my mother. Not Vic. Not Jade. Me. I watched Jade set up her phone tripod under the central fig tree while Vic led the two investors toward the east corridor, bragging about guest suites, sauna rooms, and a private dining expansion where the propagation library now stood. I opened the control dashboard. First, I revoked every guest code issued in the last 7 days. Then I reset the building hub to hidden network mode. Then I deadlocked the office, the records room, and the east service hall. I left the climate zones alone. The orchids had done nothing wrong. But I killed the decorative lighting in the tea room, shut off the music system, and closed the motorized partition between the investor path and the boiler hall. The chandelier went dark above my mother. The music cut out. One of the investors startled and turned. Vic swore. Jade looked around like the room had insulted her. Then the side gate buzzed red, the office handle stopped responding, and every climate panel in the public halls flashed access denied. I took a sip of coffee from the thermos on the passenger seat and watched. This was the part people like Vic could never survive. Not loss. Loss, they understood. Control. The second he realized he could not override a system he had decided was his, he crossed the line from greedy to stupid. My phone lit up. 10 new texts from my mother. Stop this. Do not humiliate us in front of guests. This is exactly why people think you are unstable. Open the office now. I sent one message back. You are inside my property under false authority. Leave before I call the sheriff. Then I waited. It took Vic 1 minute and 14 seconds to throw the first chair. He slammed it into the service hall glass hard enough to crack the lower panel. One of the investors backed up. Jade started filming not because she was scared, but because instinct had turned every disaster in her life into content. My mother kept saying, "Vic, stop," but her voice had that false, breathy quality it always got when she wanted later to say she had tried. He hit the glass again. It gave. He climbed through into the service corridor, cursing, bleeding from one knuckle, and headed for the admin office. There it was. The moment I needed, because until then this could still be dressed up as a family property dispute. Now he had forced entry after written warning on a property that was not his. My phone rang. "Jade." I answered. "If you do not open this place right now, I am calling the sheriff and telling them you are outside stalking us," she said. "You are sick, Tessa. Everyone knows it." "Please do," I said, and hung up. Then I pulled the black binder from the passenger seat and opened it on my lap. County recorder copy of the transfer on death deed my grandmother filed, 6 months before she died, conveying Rowan House Conservatory, and all attached operating structures to me upon her death. Hospital discharge summary from Red Ash: neurological rehabilitation, concussion, vestibular injury, no psychiatric hold, no incompetency, finding patient alert and medically competent. Admin logs showing I was sole master operator of the building network and that all other access had been revoked after my written warning. Screenshots of my mother's public posts describing me as unstable, dangerous, and unable to manage my own affairs. Copies of the fake stabilization agreement. And under that, the piece I liked best. A forensic print analysis from a friend at the county records office who owed me a favor after I had once repaired the orchids in her courthouse rotunda for free. The microdot signature on the fake agreement matched the color printer in Vic's home office, the same printer visible in the background of one of Jade's vanity videos 3 days earlier. They had not only forged the document, they had printed it in their kitchen and filed it like I would never notice. I heard sirens before I saw them. 2 sheriff vehicles rolled into the lane just as Vic managed to pry open the admin office door with a steel trowel. He came out waving a stack of folders like he had found proof of kingship. My mother ran toward the deputies first, because she understood theater even when panic made her sloppy. "Thank God," she said. "My daughter has been harassing us from outside. She is not well. She just got out of treatment. We are trying to protect the business until she stabilizes." One deputy moved toward the van. I stepped out slowly with my binder and my keys visible in my left hand. My shoulder still hurt in damp weather. My balance was better but not perfect. I could feel my body wanting to sway from the adrenaline. I planted my boots in the gravel and looked straight at him. "My name is Tessa Rowan," I said. "This is my property." I warned them in writing to leave. He just broke into my service hall after revocation of access. "I have the deed, the logs, the forged management papers, and their filing trail," Vic shouted from the porch. "She is lying. I have operating authority. Ask her mother." The second deputy held up a hand, one at a time. Jade came hurrying down the path in flat little shoes not meant for gravel, holding her phone and crying with perfect glittering eyes. She is obsessed with control, she said. She scares people. She threatened to lock us in. She keeps medicine in the house and talks to herself. You need to get her away from us. That line almost made me smile. Because talking too much when you are panicking is how people like Jade always hand me more rope. The first deputy took my binder. The deed was on top. He read the parcel number, then called it in. My mother kept talking. The papers she filed were temporary. The family only stepped in because I was in no state to make decisions. I had become paranoid after the accident. The doctor said rest. Vic had investors ready. We were saving the place. Saving it, I said, by moving my grandmother's archives, changing my locks, rerouting my checks, and inviting buyers before her flowers died. The deputy flipped to the discharge summary. No psych hold, he read quietly. No incompetency. My mother stopped for a second. Only a second. Long enough. Vic shoved forward with the fake agreement in his hand. Look at this, he said. She signed authority over. She could not handle the place. I already knew what was coming, and that was my favorite kind of moment. The deputy compared the agreement to the deed packet, then to the print analysis. What is this microdot report, he asked. I told him. He looked at Vic. This agreement was printed on your office machine yesterday. Vic's whole face changed. Not guilty. Caught. Different thing. Jade moved fast, then too fast, which meant she had run out of script. While everyone looked at the papers, she slipped toward the bench under the service porch, where my work jacket still hung from the last day before my fall. She reached into her handbag, slid something into the inside pocket, and turned back with wide eyes. See, she said loudly. I told you. Look what she keeps here. If I had not been ready, it might have worked for 10 terrible seconds. But there had been one camera my grandmother never let anyone touch, not even me, unless a condenser line froze. A tiny service lens disguised in the clay swallow planter over the porch beam, aimed straight at the bench and door. I had checked it from the van the moment I arrived, and I had already pulled the clip. I handed my phone to the first deputy. Please watch the last 2 minutes from the porch camera, I said. He did. Then he replayed it. Then he looked at Jade as if he had never seen a woman lie before and hated discovering it. Tampering with evidence, he said. The little bottle she had planted was not even dramatic. It was my own prescription anti-nausea medication from rehab, the kind she knew would sound ugly if she said enough vague words beside it. But planting anything while claiming I was dangerous had the same smell as every other trick they had tried. Cheap. Fast. Stupid. The radio on the deputy's shoulder crackled. Dispatch confirmed the deed. Recorded and active. Owner Tessa Rowan. The lane went quiet in that strange, stunned way people go quiet when power slips from one body to another so fast they can almost hear it move. Vic tried one last angle. This is civil, he said. Family dispute. You cannot treat me like a criminal for trying to protect my wife's mother's business. You forced entry after written warning into property titled to someone else, the deputy said. You presented a forged authority document and your stepdaughter just planted evidence during an active call. I think we are past civil. My mother made the sound she always made when self-pity needed to become visible. Thin. Hurt. Almost elegant. Tessa, do not do this to your family, she said. I looked at her. Family. I remembered carrying soup upstairs while she told people on the phone that Rowan House kept her trapped. I remembered Vic asking for donor cash advances and calling it borrowing. I remembered Jade using my grandmother's wheelchair as a prop in a brand video, then crying when I deleted it. I remembered the hospital ceiling swimming above me after the fall, and my mother's first message glowing across the screen. What is the master code? No. They had chosen their word years ago. Mine was simpler. Leave, I said. Vic did not get the chance. The deputies put him against the porch rail and cuffed him first. Jade started screaming that she had anxiety, that she had a sponsorship meeting, that none of this was fair, which would have been funny if she had not been standing under my grandmother's, jasmine vine, wearing stolen keys on a silk ribbon. They cuffed her too. My mother did not get handcuffs that night. What she got was worse. The deputy told her she was trespassed from the property pending formal review, that she needed to gather one personal bag and wait outside the gate while the rest was documented. She looked at me then, finally stripped of performance, and for 1 second I saw it plain. She had never believed I would stand in the lane and choose myself over her tears. That was always their miscalculation. They thought decency meant permanent access. It does not. It means I gave them more chances than they deserved before I finally learned what they were. By midnight, the investors were gone, their polished shoes dirty from the gravel they had never expected to touch. The sheriff had photographed the broken glass, the forged forms, the rerouted mail, and the boxed archive ledgers waiting by the loading door. One of the deputies even helped me carry the propagation records back inside when he realized what was in the crate. Vic and Jade left in separate cars. My mother stood outside the front gate with one overnight bag and her arms crossed against the cold, still expecting me to break and invite her in. I did not. I locked the gate from my phone and watched the red indicator turn solid. Then I went inside Rowan House alone for the first time since the funeral. Broken glass glittered in the service hall. The investors' half-finished drinks still sat on the tea room table. One candle Jade had placed for atmosphere had burned low enough to drown itself in wax. I turned on only the boiler hall lamp and the east greenhouse mist. The house sounded like itself again, when their voices were gone. That was what I noticed first. Not silence. Truth. 3 days later, my mother tried one last trick. She had a lawyer send a letter claiming that the funds she and Vic had put into the west roof repair 2 years earlier gave them an equitable interest in Rowan House and a right to reimbursement before I resumed operations. I mailed back the invoice packet. The roof payment had come from a preservation grant my grandmother won, not from them. My mother had signed the reimbursement receipt herself when she deposited the grant check into the business account. Under that receipt, my attorney added one sentence. Any further claim of private contribution will require explanation of the duplicate reimbursement already accepted. The letter trail stopped there. People like my mother only love a courtroom until the records start talking. The rest took work. Real work. The broken hall glass had to be replaced with period match panes. The archive crates had to be checked for moisture. The donor list had to be cleaned. The website had to be corrected. The Saturday class calendar had to be reopened, one hand-typed line at a time, while my shoulders still clicked and my balance still went bad if I moved too fast between heat and cold. I did it anyway. Because Rowan House had never been saved by speeches, only by the person who stayed after the applause and cleaned the benches. I kept the service porch camera. I kept the scar above my ear. I kept the van even after the mechanic told me I would be better off buying something newer, because that old thing had sat with me in the dark while I watched my family drink over my life and decided I was done begging. A month later, I rehung the brass sign over the tea room door. Rowan House Conservatory and Tea Hall. Not spa. Not retreat. Not private luxury estate. The first Saturday class sold out in 4 days. Women came in carrying root-bound grocery store orchids and stories too heavy for normal rooms. I set my grandmother's pruning shears on the demo table, laid out bark mix and labels, and taught the class from the stool she used when chemo made her legs weak. By the end of the morning, the room smelled like moss, cinnamon tea, and damp cedar. One of the older women stayed behind after everyone left. Your grandmother would be relieved, she said. Not proud. Relieved. She knew who wanted the house. She worried about what they would do when she was gone. I nodded. I knew. Because in the end, that was the ugliest part. Not that my family betrayed me, that my grandmother had seen it coming and still had to die knowing I would face it alone for a while. But alone is not the same thing as powerless. My mother thought grief would make me soft enough to displace. Vic thought broken glass and forged forms could turn theft into management. Jade thought tears on camera were the same thing as innocence. All three of them looked at Rowan House and saw a backdrop, an asset, a set of rooms they could occupy until the paperwork caught up. I looked at it and saw temperature maps, root rot risks, donor schedules, clay dust under the bench legs, the weak latch on the east door, the swallow camera above the porch, the kind of work that keeps old places alive, because someone loves them enough to learn every vulnerable point. That was the difference. They thought ownership was the front gate. I knew it was the system beneath the glass. So when they told the county I was unstable, changed my locks, and raised a toast under my grandmother's roof, they believed they had already won. What they actually did was give me exactly what greedy people always give when they get too comfortable. Time to watch them make one mistake after another until the law could see what I had known about them all along. They were never rescuers. They were just trespassers, with better clothes. And when the deputies drove away with Vic and Jade in the back, and my mother stood outside the locked gate pretending not to shiver, Rowan House did not feel inherited. It felt defended.